before we, thank you. Okay. Can you still hear me? Great. Good morning, everyone. Before I do an introduction and everything, I'd like us to do some prayers together because these are very ancient prayers that have been passed down over the last, some of them over 900 years ago. Actually, the first prayer are the words of the Buddha. And it's called the Tashi prayer. Tashi means auspicious. And most Tibetans would do this before, when they wake up, before they go on a trip, before you do anything, and at nighttime, so you have auspicious dreams. And it's a prayer that's often used sort of for protection, you might say. But it's just a very nice prayer. I always like to start this, and my teachers always began with this prayer. So we're going to just sing the Tibetan, because the English is probably going to be different throughout the room, which happens a lot. And you can just follow along. Don't worry how you sound. Normally we do this in prayer mudra, which I do like this, kind of at my heart, but you're holding a book, you just hold one hand up. And if that's too much, don't even worry about it. Oh, let me make sure my phone is off. No matter what, I'm sure I'll get an advertisement. Om Nansi Nandaran Shin Lundupe Tashi Joju Shinna Chupaye Sanje Chudangendun Papetsok Kunla Chatsa Dacha Trashi Shok Runmegya Polsadin Tundungom Jampegyen Bagera Padamba Kunla Gompo Jachen Drapachen Lumpo Tapat Sadra Adanin Samchen Tamche Lagom Drape Bel Yitzin Se Patsara Drapel De Sensan Dube Trashi Balbawa Dewa Shepa Yela Chatsalo Jampa Shunu Baden Dorjitzin Chen Rizik Wangumbo Jambe Bel Sayi Nimbo Dripa Namba Sal Nam Ki Nimbo Bajo Kuntu San Opa Dorje Bekar Lunshinan Nobu Tawarodi Nimai Chatsen Le Nandrashi Kaugi Chok Jan Chutsen Bagela Chatsalo Rinchen Dojo Drashi Segingyan Tuchon Bonso Yion Kamala Nandra Tudan Bonso Palbeu Minu Gyatsen Wangyor Orlote Rinchen Tacho Keki Chatsen Chen Jodu Gyawa Chuchi Kekekma Keksok Ngo Wadrinbe Pal Pelwe Trashi Lhamo Gila Chatsa Lo Sampa Chembo Jeju Sek Mebu Miton Dendan Yapo Yorkor Sun Pake Bodan Lukwan Mik Misam Natu Se De Ladze Gorlodan Trishula dan du tu tor che chen. Bi wam rel di chu den ya zen zen. Sa su ne su ge le tra shi bel. Chit ding yong wa ge la chat sa lo. Da cha den dira jawa som ba la. Kek dan ne wa tse wa kun chi ne. Du du pa pa san du yi shin du. Cha shi de le kun sun so par sho. Thank you, everyone. You all sounded beautiful. All right, wait, we're not done. One more prayer. It's only 29 stanzas. And I'm going to talk a lot about this prayer today. And traditionally, for most of my teachers, this is always the next prayer. This is a prayer that gives homage to our entire lineage as Karma Kagyu practitioners. And this is called the Mahamudra Lineage Prayer. So Mahamudra is, you might say, our final goal as becoming Buddhas within this lifetime to recognize our true nature. It's called Mahamudra. And so this touches on who they were, and we're going to talk more about it later, but this is a really very special song. And it's more than a song. People use this as a visualization. And I'm going to be teaching again in August, and we'll go deeper into that. But I wanted to make sure I introduced this to you today for several reasons. Let's see, this has so many tunes. I'll do more of a simpler tune that's nice. And I might change it for a moment, so please bear with me. Dorje janjin delo narodan marpa mila jujegam popa dusun cheja kunjin Karmapa jeti chungi yupa zinam dan drita sum baden drubaso zablam chadya chenglanya nepe nyame jogun dapo kadyula so adepso kadyula manam yupazino namdar jinjilo jinlo kongi gambar sun pashin zenor kunla jachin me badan sedidudat chupegom chenla nekor shenba me par jinjilo Mogogongi gowor sun pashin menya tergo jebe lamala yundu sowa depegom chenla chumin mugu jewar jin jilo yen me gongi oshir sung pashin ganchar tope o so mate macho dekar tope gom chenla Om Jalodan Drawar Jinjilo Nam Togmo Chukor Sung Pashin Jian Mayin Jiryang Charwala Magarobar Charwe Om Chenla Orde Yerme Dopar Jinjilu Ewa Kundu Yandan Lamadan Drame Chuki Bala Lonjujin Sadan Lamki Yunten Ratsone Dorche Changi Yopan Yordosho Dorje Changi Yopan Yordosho. Let's just sit for a moment. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. And I've not been here for a very long time. My name is Cathy Jackson, or Cathy Lhamo Jackson. I've been around since the 80s. So some of you, if you were not born then, you can leave now. No, I'm joking. So 5 months, back in March, I ruptured my Achilles tendon at work. In the middle, I work night shifts. And so the first month, so everyone said, oh, you're so lucky, you're gonna have a lot of time off to practice. So this is what I practiced for 5 months. Month 1, I learned how to sleep again. During COVID, I worked too much. And so when my husband would go to work, I would come downstairs, fall asleep in his chair, and then try and tidy the house right before he got home from work. He's right outside, I don't think he can hear this. Then, of course, he never expected anything. And also I learned how to use the boot and how to give myself sponge baths. And all these years I've worked with patients, and I don't think I ever understood what limitations or what walls we hit when we're at home recovering. Month 2, I discovered how to use the boot. I could spin in it. I could walk fast because it protected my legs so well. You all know what a boot is, right up to your knee. And it was a great invention, whoever did that. Every 2 weeks, there were inserts in it so that it allowed my Achilles fibers to find each other because it neutralized my Achilles tendon. It kept my foot like this, so my Achilles, they found themselves and they healed beautifully. That was month 2. Month 3, I discovered going to physical therapy and I could walk again with a walker in my neighborhood. Month 4, I got really fast. The neighbors asked me to slow down on the streets because you can't walk on a sidewalk with a walker. And I tried to move over to a cane, but that's been a slower process. So by the time June came along, so it was March, April, May, oh no, month 4, but something very special happened that we're going to talk about today. And I'll no longer talk about myself soon. So month 4, one of our beloved teachers, Thrangu Rinpoche, who is 91, he died. He left his body on June 4th. And today we're going to talk about him. How many here ever were at his teachings besides Ron? Is Julaine, you want to put your hand up if you know who I'm talking about? So he was so prolific in his books that I went downstairs today to tell you what books to look at. And I couldn't find any, and I realized why. A lot of people donated that library. The last books you're going to donate are his. The last books you're ever going to give away are his, because he is the man. He was the tutor to so many different teachers over the years. So I thought today I would speak about him and a few of his books, and we'll carry on with that later. But the one reason I wanted to do the Dorje Chang prayer, the slow one that we did secondly, he did that before every teaching he ever was at that I was at. And I read that he always did that because it sums up kind of who we're going to become. And so we're going to go over it in English later on. But I just thought I would talk a little bit about, let me bring up my iPad. I made a really fast outline. So this is a picture of him. He's very old here. He's in his late 90s here. He never stops smiling. Did he disappear? Well, that's good. Let's get him here. Is that better? Thank you, everyone. I love when people are, we're all trained from Zoom, I think. And so, and he's especially very special to several of us here because we got to go to a monastery every year, right? And see him. He was there, he came so many times. Our monastery is in upstate New York. And he would give astounding teachings. And it seemed like anything he taught, you understood it. I don't consider myself very intellectual. I'm more devotional. But when he taught, it stuck. And he taught even profound, high-level things, but he figured out how to teach it to people of all levels. So we're going to talk a little bit about his life today, because I think a lot of you might not be aware of. And so another reason why I would like to introduce this concept is, for all of you, you were invited to go to YouTube. His name is Thrangu. His lineage came from Thrangu, Tibet. It's Thrangu, T like Tom. And if you go to Thrangu Media on YouTube, for the last 40-odd days, they've been, ever since he died, they do practices at his monasteries all over the world, but they're filming it at Namo Buddha in Nepal. It's the most beautiful monastery, and I've been meaning to tell Julaine this. Every week they change the shrine, because during the daytime, they do 4 sessions. So throughout the day and night almost, except late night, they're practicing different practices according to our tradition that normally you would do for a very high teacher. And this is unprecedented. Most of us have never really seen, we don't get to see that because that's too much filming. But at night they film crying to the guru from afar and supplication practices. And they do it so, it's the best cameras, and they have the script at the bottom so you can read that. And I invite you, I think at 9:15 every morning. I never watch it then. I just play it throughout the day because the singing is some of the best I've ever heard. Plus, what's really kind of fun, after a while, in the beginning, the monks were all mourning very heavily. This is a man who basically, he raised so many people there. He was almost like dad and granddad to everyone, and great-grandfather. And the first few weeks, it was very like this. Now it's much more lively. And around the very outer ring in the main shrine room there are all the young kids, so they can really belt out those high notes. I mean, you really try and watch them though. They really misbehave. I love them. They're my favorite. They're real kids, right? And so they always have older kids sitting with them, but they just let them, they let them stretch it out, you might say. So I invite you to go YouTube, Thrangu Media, and they're doing it in Canada and they're doing it in Hong Kong, but go to Thrangu Media, because that's the one at Namo Buddha. And you can go back all the way to June, maybe 5th is when they started. So remember I said I learned how to sleep really well. And then, in my second month, I really learned a lot about television. And I knew it was really bad when I started praying for people on TV, and it was probably a taping, right? So I thought, no, this is ridiculous. And then thank God, finally by month 4, this event happened, and it's been done so skillfully. And for those of students here that were students of Khenchen Thrangu Rinpoche, Lama Cathy, and me, and many people here in the room were his students, this is exactly the same thing they did for him. Every night they did that practice, and during the day they did like Amitabha for 1 week, Chakra Samvara 1 week, they would do the Bardos for 1 week, Shitro, so there's 1 more week left. And so, but I go back sometimes because they do different music. And the head of our whole lineage is his name is Gyalwa Karmapa. It's a picture of him on the shrine. He's the 17th, the 16th is up there in a painting. He has been the director and advisor to tell them what practices to do each week. And so some nights, while they're doing the 7 o'clock practice, so what we're watching at night is the 7 o'clock, so it's after their dinner. And you see monks in their bare feet on top of the shrine setting up for the next week. It's so cool. You gotta watch it, Julaine. She's the shrine keeper, she'll go crazy. So anyway, that's my that has been the nicest thing because I haven't been able to do quiet meditation since my body's changed so much and I went through a lot of trauma. Now things are calming down, but I think it's very nice to realize that, we meditate in so many different ways. We do quiet meditation here, but we also do chanting. And so I'm more of a chanter, and so this has really kind of fed my soul, you might say, if we have a soul. So let's talk about Thrangu Rinpoche. So he was born, and anyone, Ron, what year do you think he was born? After Khenchen Rinpoche, 1933. So I lived in 91, and he is from Eastern Tibet, and I have to watch the time. So he is considered a tulku. He is a person who has chosen to be reborn. So it's the Thrangu Tulkus. He's the 9th one that was reborn, and he was born in a little area in Eastern Tibet. That's where most of them are born. And just to give you geography, so the Chinese came through the east. Here's China, here's Eastern Tibet, and then here's, what is the main, I'm thinking Serpu Monastery. Anyway, here's Lhasa, right, and then kind of more over on the western edge. So he was born there, and he went through the typical training. It's called recognized. The one before him had described where he would be reborn, and the Karmapa and the Situ Rinpoche did the prediction letters, and they found him. He was very young, and I don't think he went into monastery till he was 5 or 6, which is almost like a boarding school you live at. And sometimes there's a little sign that this was probably a real tulku. When he got to the monastery, he was insistent that he get his white mule and his white dog. He wanted to know where his dog and mule were. And his parents said, quit asking for that. You ask for that everywhere you go. And an old attendant from the 8th Karmapa, who was really old, said, I know where they are. They're really old, so he brought him out, and he was overwhelmed with joy. So he's a very humble person, so he never played up his ability to sense things, but supposedly he had many gifts. So moving on. So he was born in 1933, so he went through his training, and then then he went through many different monasteries and kept going through the ranks. He went through different retreats, and he is a tulku, so they're given very high training because he basically takes the lineage of the 8th and then brings it here and then moves it to the 9th, or the 10th. So at some point, he did a 3-year retreat and other retreats, and our teacher, Khenpo Kharchen Rinpoche, did many retreats with him. And but then everything changed in the late 50s when the Chinese started to come. So the Chinese were starting to knock on the border of Tibet pretty heavily early 50s. And a special monk showed up that had been teaching all over Tibet. He was very controversial. I can show another picture. So this is his picture, Khenpo Gangchar. It's one of the few pictures they have of him. Have any of you been to these teachings? Can I see? Julaine, okay, so Khenpo Kharchen Rinpoche taught on this. Ron, you probably were there around 2012. He taught at our center in Columbus. So this monk came, and he started teaching all of Tibet how to deal with your mind during a difficult time, because he had a vision that they were going to be overrun by the communists. And it was very controversial. A lot of old timers like, no, you don't teach this to everyday people. Like he'd teach in a monastery, and the next few hours he'd be down in the village teaching anyone that wanted it. And so Thrangu Rinpoche invited him, and my teacher, Khenpo Kharchen Rinpoche, spoke a lot at this event. But I was in India and got teachings from Thrangu Rinpoche on this. From his very mouth, he said these words. He said, I told no one at the monastery, but I decided I was going to leave and become a rebel soldier for the Tibetan cause. I went to the tailor, I paid them well so they would tell no one, and I had a uniform made. A soldier, he was going to become a soldier. He was going to no longer be in charge of hundreds and hundreds of monks and nuns and whole villages. He was going to try and and protect Tibet. And this monk showed up, and he gave such profound, simple teachings on how to recognize your mind instantly. The whole monastery changed. Other teachers have said monks that always fought with each other completely stopped doing that. Everyone shifted, including Thrangu Rinpoche, because he was the highest teacher. He spent a great deal of time with him. And I don't know if he ever told him that or what was going on, but obviously he did not leave to go and kill other people. So that was 1957. Around 1959 or so, things were getting really bad. There was bombing, et cetera, on Eastern Tibet's front. So the monastery, Thrangu Rinpoche and other teachers, along with our teacher, decided to leave. And they packed some mules. He liked mules. Mules are good animals for packing. And they had their provisions. And they got on there were only 2 roads to go out of that part of Tibet. And they had a traffic jam with yaks everywhere. Thousands of people were escaping. They didn't want to be killed because planes were already going overhead and they'd never seen a plane before. So the long story is he made it all the way to get the blessings of the Karmapa all the way across Tibet to go to Lhasa. Serpu's near there, that's the monastery. And the Karmapa said, things are not going to get any better. You're to rest here for a month. I'm going to give you yaks and 3 yaks full of provisions, and then you're to go on. But it took them almost 3 months to get to there and to get to the Karmapa. And in those 3 months, they had some really close calls. So they then moved on. They went to Bhutan. And finally, because of the work of the Dalai Lama, they were able to get through the border there. And they spent several years at a very rough place. Orville and my husband and I were in this, we had to go through this, it's called a border town, really rough. And there were prisons there that were emptied, and they had all the monks live in the prisons. And there were about 1,500 monks of every tradition. So we're a very specific, we're not the same tradition for people walking off the street as His Holiness Dalai Lama. There's kind of 4 main schools in modern time. There's Gelugpa, Nyingma, Shakyapa, and Karma Kagyu. And they were all thrown together in this prison camp. And food was very sparse. And our teacher, Mahamudra Rinpoche, was in the hospital most of the time. So his stories are around that. But Thrangu Rinpoche was working with, and all the monks, and His Holiness Dalai Lama organized it. They all shared. So often when you go to a teacher that has holds a lineage, they will give you a reading transmission. So all of the different transmissions blended, and they shared everything with each other. And then they all had examinations together, because you have to take exams for different levels. So Thrangu Rinpoche did that. He got some of his higher exams there done. And our teacher made it through. Supposedly he gave away all of his medicine to other people, but he also got out of there. Thrangu Rinpoche spent some time in India teaching. And the Dalai Lama asked him to become the Karmapas, become one of the main tutors. So as the 17th Karmapa came later, he is considered the main tutor of many of the Karmapas. So even though when we see him, we don't see this intellectual genius he truly is. He's so skilled, you don't see it. He doesn't have that edge. So then finally, he finally settled in Nepal and built a very tiny monastery, which I was at, which I thought was huge. I didn't know it was tiny. He built that in the 80s, and I was there in 89. I didn't realize it was just been built. And then Nepal has several huge stupas full of relics of the Buddha. And so there's like a ring of monasteries all around it. He was one of those monasteries. But his vision was to build a much bigger monastery way in the middle of nowhere on a beautiful mountainside where there's no pollution like Kathmandu. So that's Namo Buddha. And that's where the filming, if you go online, that's that monastery. So what are his accomplishments? They're pretty amazing. Well, just moving forward for a moment, I'll intertwine them in here. So not only did he build those 2 monasteries, they're basically complexes. He built nunneries everywhere. He built 3 retreat sites all over Asia, primarily at first Nepal, and then I believe somewhere in India. And then in Nepal, there was a need for a lot of Tibetan children that were orphaned. So he started sort of a wonderful school that's still going today to train Himalayan children on the traditions of Tibet, of being a Tibetan, but also to get a very modern education. And a lot of them have come to the West to go to college. It's very impressive. He had clinics, or he still has clinics they started. Not to mention all the different books. In the old days, when we were Buddhists in the 1980s, there weren't a lot of books out there. So Thrangu Rinpoche decided everyone on his Western, he by then was teaching Westerners that came to him. They asked if they could transcribe him. He said, sure. So they slowly started developing and printing books. So that was an amazing thing for Buddhists living in Ohio that can't go to Nepal. I can just go to the store and get a teaching that what I love is most of them were teachings, not just a book, where he wrote, truly a teaching. And maybe what's really unique about all of his books are, if you ever need a good if you ever need a good glossary, you go to his books. If you need other supplemental indexes, this is where it's very intellectual. It's beautiful, great diagrams, and beautiful questions and answers in every book. So that's another thing that he was very well known for. So then moving forward, after things got settled in Nepal, he started traveling. And so he's traveled all over the world. I don't know if he went to Antarctica, but he's been throughout Asia, Europe, and the Americas and Canada, a great deal in Canada. He has a monastery there. He has a few centers in America. And but in the last maybe 10 years, he slowed down a little bit. And he's so organized that before he died, he laid out who was in charge of what. So his organization is thousands of monks and nuns and of course the locals that are very involved. And during the earthquakes, I'm sorry, I haven't stopped, I just keep going. During the earthquakes in Nepal in 2015, he had enough connection, they found helicopters to go to those outlying areas where no one had gotten any food or water. And because his schools focus on those kids way in the outback that don't have a lot of resources and ability to get in. So it was very impressive. So I always forget when I would go to his teaching what a great person he was, because he never let on. He didn't wear anything fancy, just very, very simple. So let me see if I'm sure I missed something here. Are there any questions? No questions, okay. Let me just look here. So I always like to give resources in my class so that you can always go somewhere to look stuff up. His main website is Rinpoche. So Rinpoche is a title we give to teachers. It means precious one. It's rinpoche.com. Rinpoche.com has a great deal of what's going on right now, a lot of prayers, a lot of links, and a great deal of his books, by the blessings of some very nice people, have been digitized. And a lot of them are free, or $1. Or you can, I think that includes shipping. They're at Namse Bangso bookstore. Actually, excuse me, that's our bookstore in upstate New York. It's at Namo Buddha Publications. So if you're ever interested, you could always ask me again. You can even if you go to Rinpoche.com, all that information's there. But I was surprised how much information I got from there for free. I misspoke. The books, I think, are $1.75. But, so what kind of books did he have? Did he write over the years? Well, remember I said that he covered everything. So he started out with people that were Westerners that didn't know anything about Buddhism. So every prayer he would put a book out about, because he would teach on it. And then slowly, all the Buddhist concepts. And then over time, he started to get into the really interesting things, which are, I mentioned at the beginning of the class, this prayer that we did was called the Mahamudra Lineage Prayer. Maybe just for fun, I'll look up the word Mahamudra in the glossary. I'll get it right. So Mahamudra means great seal, like a seal, you put on a letter. And it means that all phenomena are sealed by the primordial perfect true nature. This is kind of heady stuff, but basically, at some time in your career as a Buddhist, your teachers may point out the nature. Normally it's an oral lineage where your teachers point out the nature of your mind, who you truly are. And it could be just a few words, a gesture. It could be a teaching you went to, and you suddenly have that aha moment. They say that our minds are naturally in this state, but our bewilderment and our neuroses cover it up. So have you ever you're doing something and suddenly your mind completely just drops and rests for a moment? We're talking a moment. And then we go back to that busy chatter. So that's Mahamudra. It's where we don't stop thinking. It's just we identify with the world in a very different way. And it's considered, Mama Cathy, by the way, is very good at teaching this. I'm begging her to do some Mahamudra courses soon. But when you learn Mahamudra, it's so simple. And the Karmapas have said they'd like the Westerners to learn that because we're so well educated. So our minds are already ready for this type of practice. And so that's kind of why I chose that prayer today, because Thrangu Rinpoche spent a great deal of time talking about Mahamudra and teaching meditations on it. Because it's not something you just become. You have to, it's a practice. So let me go back. In the glossary, I can remember the word. This is a little involved, let's see. So back to Mahamudra, the meditative transmission emphasizes perceiving the mind directly rather than engaging in rational analysis. And it goes all the way back to the time of Marpa and refers to the experience of the practitioner, that's all of us, who attain the union of emptiness and luminosity and also perceive the non-duality of the phenomenal world. Boy, this is really heady description. Basically, it's resting in the nature of who you truly are. So I thought for a moment, since we don't have any Q&A, we could take a look at that Dorje Chong prayer that we did. And let's just let's read it in English. There's 3 sections to it. And we're not gonna go deep into it today, but I just thought it'd be nice. This is the one that starts with Dorje Chong. So it's in 3 sections. The first is the lineage, and we're supplicating those that brought this lineage together. Everyone have a booklet? Thank you. So if you have the white one, it's past the page that says Chenrezig. Okay. So I'm going to read a bunch of names. You can read with me, and I'll dissect this a little bit afterwards. So let's start. It says, and we're going to read only in English. Great Vajradhara, Tilopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Lord of Dharma Gampopa, knower of the 3 times omniscient Karmapa, holder of the 4 great and 8 lesser lineages. So let's just stop for a minute. My God, how many words there do you not recognize? So, Vajradhara is, we have a statue downstairs that's going to be consecrated. There'll be our main Buddha. Instead of a Buddha, it's going to be Vajradhara. And is there a picture of Vajradhara in here? I can look that up, can't I? We were all kind of shocked when we learned that our teacher, because of our fire we had years ago, he said he was going to get us statues. And we didn't think we would get what he got, which is pretty amazing. Can you come down a little bit? Come on. I won't come down. Oh, good. Here's some good ones. It's so frustrating with the iPad. Sometimes it just won't do what you totally want it to do. Now it went away. Now it's going to talk about him. All right. So he's blue. Is he still up there? He's blue. And he's holding in his hands a bell and a dorje. And they're symbolizing separability of wisdom and compassion. And so this begins with him because he's a form of a Buddha for us in everyday terms. So this is a lineage prayer. So we're going from the top down. And then his student was Tilopa, and his student was Naropa. Next was Marpa, Milarepa, Gampopa. The knower of the 3 times is Dusum Khenpa, who was the first Karmapa. We're now up to 17. And all of them are part of the short stack, or the short group of our lineage. We're going back 900 years for some of them. And many of them spent their entire life getting these teachings and getting it written down for us. So it's pretty amazing. And then it says, holder of the 4 great and 8 lesser lineages. Well, we have a lot of different lineages inside of Karma Kagyu. And the next line is all that. Drikung, and these were all founded by different students. Drikung, Taklung, Sapa, these 3. And they were all founded by, I can't remember who, by one person. Then there was a glorious Drukpa and so on, masters of the profound path of Mahamudra. Unequal protectors of beings, the Dakpo Kagyu, is a form of Karma Kagyu. I supplicate the Kagyu Lamas. So basically, this is an homage to that, to those that founded this. The next is kind of the main entree, I guess. I won't use the word meat. So it's a main section. And this has 4 points, which are very beautiful. And these are the teachings. And they begin, where it says, grant your blessings. Grant your blessings that I follow your example, I hold your lineage. And now it begins. Detachment is the foot of meditation as is taught. To the meditator who is not attached to food and wealth, who cuts the ties to this life, grant your blessings that I have no attachment to honor or gain. So that's the first teaching. And so there's a lot of heavy symbolism in here, but essentially just not to be so attached to everything. Yes, we need to have food and clothing and a house over our head, but to know that it's all impermanent. But at the same time, use it well. So the first one is not to be so attached or grasping to everything. The second one is devotion. Devotion is the head of meditation, as is taught. To the guru who opens the gate of the treasury of oral instructions, which I mentioned for Mahamudra, to this meditator who will continually supplicate you, grant your blessings, an uncontrived devotion is born within. So devotion and confidence is very important in this lineage. And how do you get that? Well, you slowly get that. And we're going to go over this the next time I teach. The next one, non-distraction is the body of meditation as is taught. So what do we have? First we had not to be attached, detachment. The second one was devotion. And now we're talking about non-distraction. And it goes on, whatever arises is fresh, the nature of thought. To the meditator who rests simply in that meditation without altering it, grant your blessing that this meditation is free of conception. And that's after you've mastered this practice. That's not right now. And then the next one, the nature of thought is Dharmakaya as is taught. Nothing whatsoever, it arises as everything. To the meditator for whom it all arises as unceasing play, grant your blessing that I realize samsara and nirvana are inseparable. Samsara and nirvana are, this is a world we consider samsara, which has pain, suffering, but has joy and love. We have kind of everything here all bundled together. And then nirvana is awakening. So at some point, you can live in samsara and be fully awakened. And the last is an aspiration. So this is part 3. Through all of my births, may I not be separated from the perfect Guru, and so enjoy the splendor of Dharma. Perfecting the qualities of the path and stages, may I quickly attain the state of Ajudara. What's very important here is to realize, and this is something in Buddhism we have to remind ourselves. I work as a hospital chaplain, so I always have to remind myself that our viewpoint is a little different than maybe some of you. I know I was raised Catholic, where our ultimate goal was, to have the grace of God or whatever. But here, in Buddhism, it's not relying on any outside source. We believe the divine is within us, and that ability is within here. Of course, we believe in blessings and wonderful circumstances that come our way, but we don't rely on just some outside source to protect and help us. We rely on our practice. And so that is the Dorje Chung. We often just call the Dorje Chung prayer. The Dorje Chung Tongma means short prayer. So it's pretty profound, isn't it? It looks very simple on the outside, but there's a Thrangu Rinpoche on YouTube. There are many, many teachings he's did on this. And the next time I come, I'm going to, I was looking for a picture of Dorje Chung. Here it is, right in front of me. So this is a compilation over 40 for 50 years of every time I said he taught any topic, he did this prayer first, and he gave a talk on it. After a while, I realized, this is a really heavy-duty prayer. So this booklet is a compilation of all of that and has some of the best appendices I've ever seen. It goes into who is Marpa, who's Milarepa. I mean, it does nice snapshots, but it really explains how this very simple prayer is much more than that. So I think we have about 15 minutes. We can leave early if we want. It's a hot day. Or if there's, and so he did many other books. And I'll leave these up here for a few minutes if people want to look at them when I end. And I would gladly stay if people have questions about, if you want to talk to me, or any public questions? No? I put you to sleep. Can you go over to the mic? Is that okay? I'm sorry. It's mic'd, right? It's turned on. Okay, thank you.
Hi.
Oh, I didn't know the mic is over here too. I haven't been here in a while.
I just wanted some clarity on, you gave us some web links that we could follow. Could you give us those again?
You want the links again?
Yes, please.
Absolutely. So to watch, let's go through this slowly. To watch the videos right now of, so for 49 days, I didn't go into this much. That's right, I have 15 minutes. I might talk about this. Let me first give you the links. So for YouTube, of course, YouTube, and then you put in, when you bring it on the screen, bring up Thrangu Media. It's spelled T as in Tom, H-R-A-N-G-U. The next word is media. And I think I wrote down what it's called. Let me just bring it on my phone. Because there's a lot of, Thrangu Media will get you in the right neighborhood, but I'm trying to find, right here. My iPad should be able to just open up right to it. I'm on it so much. But it's fun to watch on TV too, so. T-H-R-A-N-G-U, T as in Tom, H-R-A-N-G-U, media. And so I'm going to just bring one up. So they might look like this. And the title of it is, you'll see Tibetan script, it's called Supplicating our Root Guru, Thrangu Rinpoche. And of course, I bring the one that's opening tomorrow.
Can a device small
No,
enough
no,
to
no
charge
commercials.
and last enough cold, fresh air to keep your home cool this summer,
Oh,
even
no.
if the power goes out? Picture this. It's 95 degrees outside, dead heat of summer, and the power's been out.
I never deal with my iPad that much on volume. Shoot.
And your elderly disabled parent.
There we go. So anyway, let me try and bring it up one more time. There's several of them. Day 42, this is good. So it kind of looks like this, but the camera work is great, and they have all the text there. The audio is awesome. It was never like this in the early days, I can tell you. Things have improved greatly. And maybe what I'll talk about is what is it they're praying, what the prayers are right now. They've changed because the very first day they did a special prayer, a few days by John McControl called Calling to the Guru from Afar. And it's a prayer where the student, especially if they're in grief, reflect on all the gifts that that teacher gave them. But over time, the Karmapa wrote a Guru Yoga practice that intertwines. If any of you do Guru Yoga, you'll recognize some of the mantras. The Manankam Dhams are there, and the Nama Rinpoche La Sowa Dep. And so other prayers are there, but they're all on the screen, so it's just beautifully done. Then the other resource was Namo Buddha publication. I think it's Namo, N as in nickel, A-M-O, Buddha, B-U-D-H-A-H-A-A, publication or pub. And there they have a lot of Trungpa Rinpoche's books that are now all digitized. So those are the main resources I would be using right now. Oh, and the last one, and the most important, is Trungpa Rinpoche's website. It's called Rinpoche.com. No, or is it, I think it is .com. R as in Robert, I-N-P-O-C-H-E. And I'll spell it again. R as in Robert, I, N as in nickel, P as in Paul, O-C-H-E.com. And that has his life and many others. So at this time, he has not yet been cremated. He will not be cremated till late October and early November. So his body is in the next room. So if you're watching the videos, you'll see people walking by, and that's where they're going to pay homage to him. And so when a high teacher dies, they often are seated, or they sit them up, and sometimes they use different substances to preserve the body for 49 days, like sometimes salt, mercury. It's very different than our culture. And I'm not sure what they did for Trungpa Rinpoche. He may need nothing. Sometimes I know when other teachers have died, their heart remains warm for days and days. It just depends on what meditations they did and how they died. So that's why I deal with death and dying a lot in the hospital, so I was going to talk on death and dying today. And I thought, well, this is the perfect place to talk about Trungpa Rinpoche. I mean, he gave so many of us so many teachings. So, but that was a very good question, thank you. Are there any other questions? Well, let's just spend a moment just being quiet, just a moment. And just in your heart, just offer the merit of, and I'm offering the merit of you being here today, taking your time out of your weekend on a hot, sticky day to come here, and taking all that goodness and offering into the world wherever there is a need. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day. Mic's going off.